Hello everyone, welcome to our panel about developing and publishing mobile games. We have very valuable professionals with us, and Başak from Ketchup as publishing and content coordinator, and Salih, as you may already know from his solo speech, from Rotate Labs as chief operating officer. And I'm from Math Studio as head of gaming. And also we have another panelist, Ozan from Longhorn Games as co-founder, but I think he will join us later. So while waiting for him, let's know more about Başak and about his company.
Thank you, Ozan. Well, you heard of it. I'm from Ketchup. My name is Başak, and I've been there for about 2 years now. I've been in the hyper-casual industry almost 3 years and a bit more, maybe. And well, throughout this time, we met most of you. But if we didn't have the chance, please come talk to me. Don't hesitate. Ask me anything you have in your mind, and I will do my best to help you and answer your questions. Especially if you have questions about Ketchup, I would be more than happy to answer as well. But yeah, I'm really happy to be here today, join this session as well, and with great people.
Yeah, I think I tested your patience with my presentation. So I introduced our team. We are from Gaziantep, and we are developing hyper-casual games. And we will try our best to answer the questions from Ozan. Thank you.
And I'm from Math Studio. I'm head of gaming. I design and produce games with the team. We mostly make hyper and hybrid casual games. And also we had 2 hits with the publisher a couple years ago, and now we are still looking for more hits. And also Ozan joined us, and I will let him introduce himself and maybe a bit info about his company.
Thank you. Yeah, this is Ozan, co-founder of Longhorn Games. So we are a mobile game company that produces hyper-casual and arcade idle games. Yeah, that's briefly it.
Thank you very much. So I would like to start with the first process of developing and publishing mobile games, which is market analysis and ideation. And how do you perform your market analysis and turn those into good ideas?
Of course, that's where we start. Well, when you're in hyper-casual, you have to follow the market constantly. Every day, all the time. You have to play the games, you have to know what you're playing, you need to see what is there that is new, that is not, but still working maybe, what is interesting and what is not fitting what you're playing and experiencing. Me, I have a special power, my team. We have a business team, a business development team that is amazing at market analysis. And they are conducting on weekly and monthly basis analysis, playing the whole market, top charts, lower charts, new entries, new mechanics, everything that comes to market, and filtering it for us. Because if everybody was doing this, we would have no time to do the job, right? Then we share it to our developers as well. But it is really important to see what is new and relevant to the current market. And that's what we do. We keep playing, we keep looking deeper so that we come up with the relevant ideas, better ideas, and find a good balance between those so that we can turn them into bigger games.
Yeah, actually, we are also just using market analysis tools. But also, we took some aspirations from social media so much. Actually, we have special guys in our team that make these kind of, let's say, researches and briefs us. So if you find something really original, we just just gather around and make maybe 1 or 2 day sessions about those new trends or new original game idea. So, and we try our best to create something unique within a small period of time since the market is moving so quickly. Thanks.
Yeah, so I agree with all of this. We are also we're also doing these things, but also we try to watch all the TikTok and YouTube videos and try to keep up with the trends. And also we keep up with the new CPI videos. We try to capture all of them, especially creative videos. Those are sometimes providing us some new ideas as well. Yeah.
Perfect, thank you very much. And Başak said you also look for the lower charts. I think like most of studios maybe miss that part. And I also like to check the lower charts because if you want to see something upfront, you need to dig deeper and see what's trending from the bottom. So when you design your games, is monetization or meta important in the beginning, or you just go for the marketability or the lowest CPI possible at the first place?
Yeah, so when you start the ideation process, which is the most essential part of your project development, like it's the place where you need to take the most time so that you come up with something strong and allocate your time for something that's going to worth it, right? And during this ideation, we really care to clarify certain things. You can check some of our old talks that Sami made in this very conference as well, Hyper Games, about 3 Cs, controls, camera, character. When you're doing your ideation process, you have your idea, you have your basic setup, you know which mechanics you're going to use, you know how long those are going to take time, and you basically set out everything. But you just have an idea. So we never go for just marketability, just for the low CPI, especially in 2022 right now. If you do that, it won't really probably pay off, or you will have to be super fast, stressed, trying to fix something up with your low CPI that is not sure to stay or not even. So we like to have a solid base and move on from there. I would say, of course, you need to think about the meta. Of course, you need to think about the monetization. But for the basics, most important thing is the 3 Cs and how clear is your mechanic and gameplay will be in a first prototype. So keep in mind, do not ignore, definitely, but yeah, don't just focus on the low CPI, I would say.
Yeah, I think the same way that yeah, you may have some, let's say, good idea, but you may plan for day 7 retention, but if you execute it really early, it will be, let's say, a waste of production. But you need to iterate in the ideas, the games, the potentials of, let's say, CPI and marketability. Always, I think, for this aspect, it wins, still wins. But now we are in this phase, and the margins are right now too large to just get a good, let's say, profitable game. So you need to have, as a summary, you need to have your day 7 retention iteration on your mind, but you need to go for the marketability still.
Yeah, so CPI is always important for us as well, but in the current condition, the market requires more of retention and in-game metrics. Like you need better retention, you need better gameplay minutes. So the CPI is not enough by itself most of the time. For that reason, we tend to invest in our games to the point where we can measure some stable in-game metrics. So the just monetization is not enough. We always bring the game to a certain level, and then we start testing. So that's our approach for the last 6 months, and it looks like it will continue be that way.
Yes, I agree with you guys because like only going for the CPI is not gonna work most of the time. You need your retention and playtime values to be high. So maybe before designing or during ideating the games, you need to like think about a little bit of the meta and monetization upfront, especially after Apple's IDFA changes, and that almost doubled the CPIs on iOS store, and also like some other updates from Google Play Store will come soon. That will probably hit a little bit about the monetization. So it looks like we need to be more cautious about long-term monetization of the games. And how do you balance your quality and speed of the prototypes? Because sometimes if you put one more day effort, the game may become awesome, but sometimes even if you make a couple iterations, the prototype may not go anywhere. So what's your approach here?
Of course, it's a fragile balance, I would say. But to me, it starts with picking the right partners, partnering up with the right studios, and then trying to promote them to their best, which means I will not rush a studio just to make the deadline for the test. It serves no purpose to no one, right? But I also don't want to lose time where I need to be really fast. And so partnering a good studio is my first thing. Second, in the current market, in my at least portfolio, let's say, I am working with studios mostly that are paid. So we are making payment per prototype, so I have some expectations to get from the studio. And unless I am convinced with the prototype I'm going to test, unless I know this prototype will give me, like this test for this prototype will give me the proper idea whether the product is going to be profitable or not, whether the product is promising for us to invest more time or not, there's no point for me to test. If I'm not going to know this, I shouldn't test. So that's why I will never push the studio. But again, partnering up with the right studio, you know, it will come up on the reasonable time. Sometimes it goes fast, good. Sometimes there's delays, there are problems, no problem. It's all about with partner relationships with your studio. And yeah, that's how I balance on my side.
Actually, it depends on the nature of the game, I believe. If you are, let's say, planning for a CPI-based game, those are rare, actually, now, but still may work. If you are going for a CPI-based game, I think getting the vertical slice of the game is really crucial. Let's say, without the progression or meta of the game, you need to make, let's say, as polished as you can. Since we are going for CPI. But for retention-based games, it is like, yeah, we need polish, but only maybe 20% of the polish that we have in our minds. But we need to go a little bit horizontal on that, since we are testing for retention and playtime as well. So I think that's why I can not say any, let's say, obvious thing, because it depends on the nature of the game so much. Yeah.
I agree with that. It depends on the project or the game itself, but at the same time, I think a studio can have a strategy for this. So, for example, we don't start testing until we are 70% satisfied with the result, right? So we want at least 70-75% of feeling compared to the maximum 100%. So we have this set bar of quality that we need to reach on every game. So of course there is a trade-off. That means sometimes the projects are taking longer, but this is what has been working for us really well. So I think every studio should find a way that works best for them. And I don't think there is a single true answer to this question. Yeah.
Thank you very much. I think it also depends on the subgenres that we prototype. Because if you want to make an ASMR feeling or like a simulation game, quality could be much more important, and you may need to spend more time on the prototype. But if you like just have a core mechanic which is fun to play, then you may just go faster and maybe just disregard the quality a little bit if you really like have a competition, especially with another publisher or studio, and then speed is much more important for you. So let's talk about testing a little bit. And we prototyped our game, and now we are going to test it. Also, there are other test methods before even prototyping games. So what's your approach here? You just use prototype testing, or do you use any kind of like CTR testing or any other method that you may come up with?
Yeah, so as I mentioned, we really depend on the in-game metrics, so we almost never try CTR testing, or we never first test the CPI. So we take into account combining all these metrics, and then only then we can measure the potential of the game in a true manner. Because even if you have a low CPI, if you have low game metrics, then it's really hard to increase those. And let's say you have good metrics, good in-game metrics, but high CPI, that's also really hard. So we tend to find a game that has potential in all of these metrics. Otherwise, in the long term, we found out that it's making us lose some time actually. So yeah, that's our approach.
Yeah, I totally agree. I personally don't like CTR tests at all. There was a time a few years back, I think, where it was a fury. Everyone was CTR testing just to approve a concept, art, whatsoever. But especially what I mentioned earlier, when we're working on a paper prototype base or burn rate base with bigger studios, with longer term partners, we expect to have the return on the investment as in terms of prototype. Like, I would like to know if I'm investing in an idea, if it is really promising or not. So I prefer to have a prototype that I can check not only CPI, but I can have it look at a little bit of the retention, the promising retention, what it has. So maybe the more content I put, if the playtime is going to go higher or not, to just have a glimpse of those KPIs so that I can predict better the future of the game. Yeah, it depends from which type of game we're developing, of course, but usually it comes to the same core prototype. I can say for a basic hyper-casual game, it's usually about 10 minutes of gameplay I need so that I can understand my retention. Playtime is going to refer to it. CPI, as always, ever-changing, but like, is it going to be promising or not? Which can always be decreased, to my opinion. Like, if we have the in-game promising and it's high CPI, for example, I can still iterate on this game because I know I can bring that down, right? So to me, that's why it's important to test the prototype that can give me that such idea.
Yeah, again, CPI testing is like wins always. But sometimes we make CPI tests smell like CTR tests. Because for CTR tests, it is like not a good approach for the product, since it has been abandoned, I think, mostly in the sector. But sometimes you wonder about the nature, since you are trying something maybe unique and just aiming for the feelings, and you are not so sure about the results. So you, without planning the whole progression of the game, you just make something, just maybe one scene, one level, that seems like CTR testing, but It is CPI testing actually. So we go sometimes for these kind of approaches. And sometimes we are going for, let's say, okay, yeah, we will go for CPI, of course, at the end. That's how your games will be downloaded. But let's just care for, let's say, overall playtime, since we are thinking that the gamification is a little bit strong on this one. Okay, if we get some, let's say, playtime values that are promising, now we will focus on finding some good creative ideas that lowers the CPI. Sometimes we follow this approach, not too much, but sometimes also we go for CPI testing that smells like CTR, but most of the time we still go for CPI testing, and it is valid, I think.
Looks like you are not very fond of CTR testing. Like we also use regular testing, prototype testing, but sometimes I feel like it could add some different value if a couple CTR tests made, and just to see if there is anything different from the current trends or like the upcoming trends, if something interesting can be caught at that time. And also let's talk about a bit iterations, and what's the trade-off here for you, like starting a new prototype and testing a new game to see a new result, which is most of the time always interesting, and or keep iterating on the current game. What's the trade-off here?
Well, again, it depends on the game. What you have in hand as a project, the KPIs we look at, sometimes, like not sometimes, most often, they don't match, right? Otherwise we would launch and hit, yes. Sometimes we have good CPI, but not enough in-game. Or we have strong retention, we have strong in-game metrics, but we are not able to decrease the CPI, etc. In these kind of situations, of course, you're going to keep iterating because you know that there is something, especially in this current market. If your in-game is strong, there is so many ways, again, to try and decrease CPI. Or maybe you don't need to decrease your CPI even because it can still be profitable. It is all about iterating more and understanding better how your game performs and how better it can perform. To me, I don't like to let go of a project unless I'm certain that it is, like there's no chance. I also, of course, don't like to push a project on a very light hope and take my time, studio's time, and everyone else's resources to push without knowing what I'm pushing for. So to me, it's really important to define when you're iterating, what's the next goal? What are you iterating for? So we have those metrics. In this test, we're going to check for CPI. We're going to iterate for CPI because this. Or we need to improve the retention and understand if this low CPI is something that we can build on. That's something we can have a strong in-game with later on that we can monetize so that it will become profitable. So it is really case-based, but every iteration needs to be meaningful. You can just have a random hypothesis and go for, yeah, I think this might work and let's do that, and no. And we have all the database, all the games that we test from. We know things that have performed, maybe similar things we have tested already, or maybe there are new things that we want to see. So iteration can have different purposes. Maybe sometimes you don't have hope for a game, but you want to have the learning. Like you want to know if something works so that it can help you later in another game. But this is all happening with the consensus of the studio, of course, because we just don't work on one or two projects. We continuously keep producing. Working on different projects, there are deadlines, they need to be met and everything. So it's a balance. But yeah, as long as every iteration is clearly meaningful, I think you're not trading off anything that you shouldn't.
Yeah, as Başak said, also sometimes you get to know about the mechanic and its results because it will help you from other games. But sometimes also you made these movements from another game to your current game. So with these collected data, and you sometimes you have vision for a game, like it contains a little bit data and it contains a little bit gut feeling. I believe it is time to stop iterating if you have no more bullets left for the game. Because yeah, once you start each project, you have vision, you have day 3s, you have day 7s in your mind. And if you are not, let's say, giving all the effort throughout the process and applying maybe almost all the things that in your list, in your, let's say, product backlog. So without trying all of these, it is like a waste of production time, I think. So do all of the things that you can do, and if that still is not working, yeah, just kill it.
So I think the answer here depends on the quality of the metrics a lot. So let's say we have really, really good in-game metrics, but kind of high CPI, then I think it is iteratable. An example of this is Dream Restaurant. So the Dream Restaurant had great in-game metrics. I think it was more than 50% day one retention and more than 30 minutes of gameplay, even on the first version, but the CPI was high. And we decided to go on with multiple iterations and continue with the project. And the end result was a hit with more than 10 millions of downloads. So there was I think, a good call from our side. But another example could be, we had another project with, again, great in-game results, but with high CPI. And no matter how hard we tried for 1 or 2 months, and we couldn't lower the CPI and the in-game metrics. Although they were promising, they were not enough. And in the end, we lost a lot of time in production and and energy and motivation, etc. So yeah, I think it's always a risk that you need to take, depending on the metrics. But the more experience you gain, you can make some better educated decisions or guesses, I would say. So yeah, I think it's always a challenge. But again, depending on your knowledge, you should just try to foresee what's going to happen and just make a decision as fast as you can.
Thank you very much. So we need to combine here like our experience and also the data we have, and we need to make the decision whether to kill the game or not at that point. And let's say if we come up to soft launch and now we need to make some A/B tests and some iterations. So what would be the A/B tests that you consider for the soft launch and maybe make the iterations according to them?
Yeah, we actually been through this multiple times in multiple soft launches, and what our experience is that there are certain things that you have to try. So for example, you have to test different economy styles. Faster economy, slower economy, harder economy, and you need to test different hardness of levels. So you can try hard levels, easy levels, a combination of them. You need to test where you are going to place your ads, how frequently you are going to show interstitials, where you are going to place your rewarded ads. You can also A/B test your onboarding, because some style of onboarding works better for some sort of games. So we tried all of this, for example, for Crowd Evolution, and we gained great results thanks to these A/B tests. If we hadn't done these A/B tests for Crowd Evolution, the game wouldn't have been the mega hit it has become today. So you need to find what is the most important for your game, and you need to try as many A/B tests as possible. Of course, if you have the correct amount of audience, which is also a kind of a limit for some games. So, yeah, I think that's all I can say for that.
Thank you very much. Başak, what do you think about it?
I totally agree, of course. And the last thing you said super quickly is also important when you're A/B testing to have a bigger amount of people, bigger audiences, so that it is more accurate, so you can reflect onto bigger scale. It's really important. Actually, Ozan mentioned something super important. Difficulty, I think, is the first thing that you should be testing early in stages, A/B testing. Well, he already said everything. Maybe I can give an example of a game I tested in the last few months. We just changed the difficulty of the game. The same gameplay, everything stayed same. And I had about 10 to 12% difference in retention. Likewise, in gameplay, it was, playtime, it was different and pleasant. So like it made us continue and iterate on the game further because we liked that the outcome was that people actually like to have the difficult version better than the easier one, challenging version. Not the result we expected, but the result we discovered, so kept iterating on. So it is really important to, of course, every A/B test depends on the game itself. What you can A/B test changes from your gameplay to what you offer within the game and like what's the experiences. So you should try as many of those things as possible early in your stages. Later on, you will go do the same thing with the ads, monetization, how intense you want it to be, how intense it can be, and hold it. But yeah, it depends on the game, and it's important to start early in your phase. I would also, one little note before I give it to you, your store page, as important as your game itself. You should also A/B test the store page, icons, screenshots, everything that is all there should be tested early as well.
I have some, let's say, interesting scenarios for this A/B test stuff, since we have 2 games soft launched and launched. For, let's say, it changes its nature by the game by game. For Riddle Labs, since the nature of the game is a little bit, you can put levels in any kind of order. You cannot decide which is hard or which is easy. Sometimes you think you plan you design a game, you design a level, but you think that it is easy, but users are, let's say, you will see the churn rates, they are too high, for example. So we make A/B tests as, let's say, the level order. Yeah, because it is that you may have infinite amount of, let's say, level order scenarios, but how will you decide? You will always have on A/B test on, let's say, for 2 months period to find the perfect level order data for us. And also, I want to give an interesting scenario about queue jumping game, our queue jumping game. At the beginning, the controls were like swerve, but we thought that, okay, let's just try tap and hold and release. And we see that, okay, it's just giving better results. Okay, let's just get rid of swerve, and this will actually change the game's path into a new, let's say, you will create some new opposition types when you decide one control of the game is better than the other. So yeah, I have these 2 interesting A/B test scenarios. Thanks.
Thank you very much. So I understand that you A/B tested the mechanic, like input mechanic, during soft launch, and it worked. Yeah, that's really interesting. Also, Başak, you mentioned about like ASO for A/B tests, and I totally agree with you. Like the store image or the store pictures, even the definition you mentioned there or the keywords, they really have impact about your tests and the values. And so how do we understand that we are ready for global launch? Like we did our A/B tests and iterations during the soft launch, and what's the key metric, or like what's your style of deciding to go for a global launch?
All right, so we had 2 global launches so far, and Dream Restaurant and Crowd Evolution. And for us, the global launch was to be decided only after we are sure that we are going to make money. So basically, the ARPU, the average recurring payment per user, is larger than the cost per install. That means, so for every install, we are going to make money, but we are not going to lose money because this is something you don't want, right? A simple fact. So we do our best to increase the LTV, and we do everything we can for that, including A/B tests, including new features. And then once we think that we are at this point, and even after scaling, we know that the CPRs are going to be higher. So we take that into account as well. And we do some estimates, and based on math, when we are sure it will be profitable, then it's time to globally launch the game. This has been the case for the 2 launches that I mentioned, and it just worked for us that way.
It is always a decision, by the way. Sometimes you have things to do in your in-game. By that time, you need to preserve your CPI scores, and also you need to find maybe better creatives, better CPI scenarios. So if let's say you have again a vision and you are executing on that, if the CPI is going well, you can just convert back to a little bit of progression of in-game metrics. And then CPI is a little bit going up. It's always the scenario, by the way, when you are in the soft launch. It is not a big problem that going it slightly up, no problem, but you should be caring about it is not going so high. So let's say you made your vision in the in-game, and also the CPRs are, let's say, at the worst case, slightly gone up, and the game is still profitable. Yeah, let's just go for the global launch. This is our decision process.
Yeah, likewise, they both said everything. LTV is the most important for us to decide if the game needs to be launched or not. So once we're convinced the game has strong metrics, okay, or good CPI, we start doing LTV tests, integrating ads, A/B testing ads, and profitability. And we like to take the time a little bit there so that we know, take the time, of course, not so much time, but we test several different things to know that it won't, well, you can never foolproof, but to know that it won't just change after the launch while you're scaling, to foresee everything. But LTV, the profitability of your game, is the decision maker for any global launch. And then after, when you have this decision to launch, it is all on your UA team's hands to make the scale fit to the game and try to control CPI as much as possible. But yeah, LTV is the main indicator for me, for us, for the go-to launch.
Thank you very much. So I think there needs to be some kind of negotiation between the publisher, if you are not self-publishing, and also the studio. And I think like the cost per install plus operational costs and versus LTV plays an important role here. So if the metrics are within the margins, let's say you have 15% of minimum attractive rate of return, so you go for it and go for the full launch. And let's say we launched our game, and then we gonna make some live ops, and also there will be some difficulties post-launch. And what were the difficulties you encountered, and how did you overcome them?
Yeah, the post-launch, I think one of the most common difficulties is increasing CPI values, because that happens almost all the time. The CPI, the videos get saturated, the prices goes higher, and then we need to find better creatives for the most part, because at this point we already have tried the in-game videos, and it's really hard to produce some better in-game videos after the launch. So we tend to try to find better creatives, come up with better ideas, try to follow the trends and try to re-implement the trends based on our game mechanics. And we try to gather a lot of data from our publishing partners. We try to combine whatever knowledge we have and try to find a lower CPI using a better creative video. So yeah, this is one challenge. And the other challenge is, of course, introducing new features. Because after some point, it really becomes harder to increase the in-game metrics. Because every new feature that you add can be bringing in either positive or negative results. So you have to A/B test whatever change you are going to make. So your game should be ready for these kind of tests. We have done this for Crowd Evolution, and every feature that we have added, we A/B tested, and all the new features actually improved the results. And that was really crucial for our post-launch process. Yeah, I think that's it for now.
So it is, of course, not the end, but only the beginning. When you launch the game, it doesn't stop there. You have to take care of your baby that's to introduce to the world. Well, you know, Ketchup has a big portfolio also. We still are taking care of all those games. We still are updating all those games, which are still bringing what they were bringing before, maybe in a bit lower amounts, but very significant amounts. So live ops after launch is as important and shouldn't be ignored, for sure. Besides all the SDKs you need to update, besides all the improvements you have to make, crashes you need to fix, ANRs you need to fix, you still, as Ozan said, should keep trying, maybe adding new features. But you need to be very careful and delicate with what you do. So testing every new feature, in maybe smaller audiences, of course, is important to analyze the impact and keep working on the game, especially if it's strong already. There's always more to do. We still are doing it in our live games, in our big portfolio, seeing significant differences as well. So yeah, it doesn't end. But problems occur there are also solved by the experience you have. Like the learnings, the having a big portfolio, the advantage is that you have been doing it all day, every day. We have been doing it, so we're able to apply all the learnings to all the other games as well, which is the plus. Yeah, the difficulties don't necessarily change. On the publisher side, maybe I can say it's mostly how, if the games are not performing, for example, you need to sunset, we call it, stop UA acquisition and just let the game have the revenue they're having. Those kind of things, discussions with studios, negotiations, amendments, etc., could be maybe things that you do, but it's, well, I wouldn't call it a problem. It's more like ongoing partnership negotiations, discussions we have with the partners. But yeah, live ops are important.
Yeah, CPI problem is, let's say, the biggest problem, actually. But along with that, I think this is, again, a big problem, that you, let's say, want to keep the funnel as much as high as you can. So you need to know after the launch. Actually, this happens. You get to know your audience, what they prefer to be play, and how they want to just get their, let's say, desires maximized in the game. So you plan for the, let's say, ideation of some, let's say, good levels, some tricky levels to keep the funnel high. So that will also reflect on your, let's say, day 1, day 3, day 7 retentions. So I believe, yeah, CPI is going up. It is like a general problem, but as long as the game makes money, the campaigns are still going. So in order to make them go, you need to maximize the profit at the end from your potential audience. And only way to do this is to satisfy them, because they are loyal, like day 7 users. Let's say you make 7%. These 7% can be, let's say, converted to day 14, day 30. So you may want to satisfy those users. So in order to do that, you need to, let's say, design some good levels and keep them in the game.
So post-launch, the biggest problem is CPI, and it's getting high. And what shall we do about is like the creative department works a lot to make new creatives, get the CPI lower. And if there are like other competitors or maybe some clones of the game, that's also a big problem. And we have seen in the past lots of cases like that. Even like 6 or 7 similar games were launched after the original one, and somehow they could scale, and the CPI remained like at a profitable level. But in most cases, it's not gonna work like that, and like both of the game or all of the games that are sharing the same content, not gonna be the same as if it's a single game. And also, like, the design and production teams need to continue working on the product even after post-launch, and they need to come up with new ideas, or like to implement new trends. Like for example, we had those multiplier gates on the runners, and like we have seen in other games, like those kind of new mechanics added to the game, or like new metas to the games, as like end of the runners, some kind of arcade idols. We have seen like complete subgenre implemented into the games after launch, and that's also quite worked well, I think. And also I would like to thank you for your contributions, and thank you for the audience joining us here today. And I'd like to take questions if there are any about the panel. Okay, looks like everything is crystal clear on both sides. And also, before closing, do you have anything to add, actually?
Maybe just something to add about post-launch difficulties. One of the difficulties that we have been having is our videos being used by other games. So they just take one of our videos and they just start to make revenue out of our videos. And there is no real clear way of getting rid of this, or maybe suing them or something like that. I think this is one of the things that the most prominent example of this could be X-Hero. It currently is #1 on top chart, and they are using all the creators from all the other games. So I don't know, it's kind of blatant and it's kind of funny in a way. Yeah, that's what I wanted to add.
Yeah, actually, you just pointed something interesting. That's maybe because of those algorithms about the ads and other stuff, and maybe like it's especially in gaming industry, it's not easy to like trademark your creatives or like your code, because you can have a similar games and completely have different backend for that game, but they just show the same thing actually. And I hope it gets better, like those stores, they just make updates, showing the reason of user experience, but also they need to maybe just focus a bit more about the authenticity of the products on their stores. And you guys have anything to add?
Maybe we can say something about so-called decrease of hyper-casual games. I think it is like as long as you understand the nature of the game, yeah, they are products, they are profitable products, but at the end you are designing an experience, and if you design it well, at any time it is always scales. So I think people are missing that point, that some I see, let's say some afraid looking guys that is hyper casual is in decline or something. No, it is like about the quality of market standard is going up, we can say that. But as long as you keep your quality up, you still have results. Don't worry about it. There's no thing, it is always being pronounced since 2018, I think. Is hyper casual is in decline or something, you know. But we are still seeing hyper casual games, but very well crafted hyper casual games. So I think what this means to us, that we need to create something original and also familiar, so that within our let's say policy, we call it like 30 or 40% uniquization in the games. So as long as you keep that, and as long as you extract real life experiences, funny experiences from the, let's say, real life, you will get some pretty good results, I think.
Yeah, that sums up actually pretty much what hyper casual is about, and what is coming next is always original and relatable. So if you be original, and if you stay relevant to people, there is always people to share the experience. And yeah, this probably won't go away. It will just transform into something else, but it will always stay original and relatable, because that's what we are.
Okay, thank you very much. And I think there are no questions still.
Have you ever experienced that your game has been reverse engineered and released on Chinese markets or something else? I'm asking this because we have noticed some kind of games we have tested. After a while, we have seen them on YouTube. Some kind of players are playing with them and capturing some videos, but almost our game is completely transferred to Chinese market. Have you ever experienced that kind of thing?
Yes, actually I experienced it. Like we test some prototypes, and then sometime later we saw data flowing, and there were no users in our regions. And when we check in the details, like in China, someone hacked the prototype and implemented ads into it and just published it in China. Or sometimes you see on TikTok, like your gameplay, your prototype's gameplay, and sometimes it can reach up to like 10 million, 15 million views, and someone just types their game's name, and people start to download it and play that, but it's actually your prototype or your game for the footage. And do you have anything relatable to this question in terms of your prototype or game reverse engineered or stolen?
Yeah, that happened to us as well on different games, on multiple games. Happens all the time. So as long as you can identify and detect the clone, you can just sue them, or you can just let Apple know and they will take care of it. But if you don't realize it, it will just happen. You don't even know and it will happen. There's nothing you can do about it in that case. Yeah.
Any other questions? Okay, then thank you very much for everyone.